Hi, I'm Dr. Sarah Beth Redmond. I'm going to be talking today about the care and use of your neurons. So, neurons are the cells which are able to facilitate learning. These are the cells in your brain and throughout your body which conduct signals, and your learning is a way in which those neurons are trained to recognize routine signals. So in order to learn, you have to train your neurons in order to identify signals that are going to be important and routine for them to recognize. Neurogenesis is the process of making new neurons. It is particularly important in early brain development, but it continues in humans through what we would consider early adulthood and the process, particularly of collegiate learning, is within this time period. It's dependent a lot upon the resources that are available to the brain during that time period and also the stimuli that are given to the brain during that time period. Neurogenesis can continue as long as your neurons are still receiving signals that are novel or activating. This is part of a lot of the apps that have come out as far as games and puzzles and other ways of exercising your brain well into adulthood that have become very popular. Those will work to train your brain in order to be better at solving those types of puzzles. So it is a little bit of a circle as far as training your neurons to do a certain task, but it does increase neurogenesis. The new neurons are going to be most successful if they are being made in a way that connects existing neurons. In teaching, we call this scaffolding. So one of the things that I encourage my students to do is to take terms that are associated with different components of the class and try and write a sentence or a paragraph using multiple terms. What that's doing is it's forcing you to merge the scaffolds between the information that you have for one term and the information that you have for another term. That will help the neurons in your brain actually make that permanent or at least long-lasting bridge between those two concepts. That is a key part of learning at every level, but especially when you're learning new terminology or new ideas in a discipline you're not familiar with, it's very important to try and connect them to something that you are already familiar with, because that will help your brain actually form those neuronal bridges. Other pieces, which I'll go on to talk about more, the neuron signals function along an electrochemical gradient. So it is important for a learner to maintain the electrochemical gradient. Part of that has to do with nutrition, and part of it has to do with hydration. Other things that are important are amino acids in particular. So those are the subcomponents of proteins. Many of the neurotransmitters are modified amino acids, so it is important to make sure that you have a source of those in your diet, whatever your dietary preferences are. Having amino acids as a component is important. And then also carbon macromolecules in general. Many of the resources that are preferred by neurons are in the carbohydrate category, but in general, your body is able to interconvert carbon macromolecules to some degree in order to supply your neurons. So general nutrition is important. So what I want you to think about for a moment is, what does a neuron look like? So here's an example. Neurons are cells that connect other cells to each other. They're connectors. I kind of think about them like the wires between the electrical outlets in your house. So you've got pieces of the neuron that are largely responsible for maintaining the cellular metabolism. That's the big globular part. And then you've got pieces that are much more responsible for sending signals and transmitting those signals. So those long parts are much more related to the transmitting and sending of signals. So this is a really specialized type of cell. It's very unusual in its structure and also in the ways that it interacts with the body. So when we think about how long neurons are, take a moment and try and guess what the longest neuron in your body is. And then I want you to take one of your hands and find the base of your spine. So as you follow your backbone down, around your hips, you'll find a bump. That's the base of your spine. And that is the end of your spinal cord. So like your central nervous system comes down from your brain through your spine and it ends there. But you still need to have signals that go out to the rest of your body. So the longest neuron in your body goes from the base of your spine to the end of your big toe, your hallux. So if you wiggle your big toe, you are using the longest neuron in your body. And considering that most of us do have 2 feet, for most of us, we are able to move both of those big toes. You might have similarly long, actually they're probably not equally long, but similarly long neurons going from the base of your spine to the end of your big toe. This is interesting when you start thinking about comparative neuroanatomy. So this is a scale comparison of a humanoid along with an elephant and a blue whale. So for the elephant, that point is about here, extending down to the end of the back foot. And they actually have neurons that are much longer in their nose compared to the point in their back foot. In blue whales, yes, they do not have feet, but the point at which their vertebrae diverge is about at the point of their back fin, and then it goes all the way along to the end of their tail fins. Dinosaurs are even a more fun version of this whole mind problem, because when you start thinking about long-tailed dinosaurs and long-necked dinosaurs, we get lots of different comparisons that could be made. So neurons can be very, very long. The function of neurons is to transmit signals, and these cells function essentially as connectors between other cells and to support other cells in order to keep an organism in homeostasis. Part of that, a key part of that, is the electrochemical gradient. So in neurons and other cells, there is a chemical difference and an electrical difference between the intracellular or cytoplasmic part of the cell and the extracellular part of the cell, or non-cytoplasmic. And this is what we call the membrane potential. And changes in the membrane potential are a key part in how neurons send signals and how they maintain their signals to keep them alive and to tell them to procreate. The availability of neurotransmitters, which are some of the signals that keep neurons alive, or if they are not present, allow neurons to die, is a key part. Neurotransmitters are generally derived from amino acids or proteins. So if we have a homeostatic situation, then we have enough neurotransmitters to maintain the neuron, but not enough to make it grow. If we don't have enough neurotransmitters, then the neuron will die. If we have a high level of neurotransmitter activity, then there can actually be feedback between the neuron and some of the stem cells to actually promote neuronal growth, and this can happen at different levels. So when you're learning, this is what we want. We want there to be a high level of neurotransmitter activity. So what does this mean for you as a learner? Number one, your neurons need to work. So there is a progression of the connectivity and the types of signals that are able to be sent by neurons as they progress through development from a stem cell into a mature neuron. We want to support this progression. Part of that means that sometimes your neurons need to rest. So this graph is showing neurogenesis, which is the generation of new neural connections, and nutrients. And you can see that there's actually a point at which the neurons are oversaturated. This is a key thing in individuals who become super stressed, because the nutrients here, think of it as stress level. As nutrients are released, it's a sign that cells are breaking down and their components are being released. So you want to be in kind of this medium area. This is a low stress area. Neurons need support. So this diagram shows how different cells within the brain, astrocytes and microglial cells, actually, and oligodendrocytes, support the neuron. So it's not just one cell working, it's multiple cells supporting each other. And this network is very important for the function of neurons. This is a test in which individuals were given a Sudoku test, and they had a comparison between the Sudoku memory blocks and the non-tasked memory blocks, and you can see there is a key difference as far as how different parts of the brain are engaged. What does this mean for you? Learners need to work. Learning is going to take work. It's also going to take rest. It's important for you to rest. It's important for you to give your brain time to recuperate and regain nutrition. You're going to need support. That might be people, that might be things that you do for yourself. But you're also going to need a network. That's going to be people who can connect you to resources